According to Comcast, it's 5:03. Bring us together for our January 2023 Finance Subcommittee meeting. Thank you all for taking the time. I know we have a crowded night and we have a lot to discuss here also. Gladys, I can't see, but thank you for joining us. Rachel, it's always an honor to have you on board, Madam State Rep 138. And let us begin. And say, without the agenda in front of me, the big tune tonight for us to play is our budget proposal for 2023. And
excuse me, Al, we have to select the committee chair and vice chair.
Well done, ma'am. All right.
I'd like to nominate Al Russo as chair.
I don't even know. Do we have a quorum?
Yeah, you only need 3. We've got it.
Okay.
I'll
Second
second that
that.
motion.
Sorry.
Do I hear any other nominations? Any other nominations on the floor? Any other nominations? Taking a deep breath, going once, going twice, I move that nominations for the position of chair of the Finance Subcommittee be closed. All right. Well, without any one to run against, I guess, do we need to vote?
Well, motion, all in favor? Aye.
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 Lisa, welcome aboard. Louisa Britton. All right. Being that having that issue settled, as chair, I would also like to put forward the subcommittee to bring on a vice chair once again. And for the position of vice chair, I would like to nominate Kate Canetta. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Louisa, are you on board? Louisa, you are muted.
I'm here. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry, be happy.
Yes, I'll second. Yes.
Okay. Do I hear any other nominations for the position of vice chair? Any other nominations for the position of vice chair? Going once, going twice. Okay. I vote for Kate Canetta for vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
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 So much for Robert.
Aye.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Do we have that settled now? Is there any other administrative little, do we have to accomplish before we can get down to the I would say the problem, the issue at hand, which is our 2023 budget?
If it's-
Okay. Mr. Walston, would you like to start off with this or hand it off to John, or what is your pleasure, sir?
I will do both, Mr. Russo. So thank you. And again, happy Monday evening to you all. And board members, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. First, I'd like to make an announcement. This evening, we have a citywide PTO meeting scheduled. It is a remote meeting for tonight, and Miss Erica Haynes will be joining us to provide an update on School Finance 101. And so I encourage any board members who have the time and availability this evening to join, as we have asked a number of our families to do so as well. So if you are available, it really just gives some basics around how the school budget is formed and developed. So we, of course, want to take this opportunity to thank Erica for her continued partnership here with us in the district. Second, I know the board and of course subcommittee, finance committee received an update. We were hoping and planning for an opportunity to review some of your questions that you might have before it before we speak about it publicly on Wednesday. And so I've asked John and Ed to have the PowerPoint available. John is prepared to walk you through the presentation tonight, and anticipating there'll be some questions that follow. Of course, all of us will be available to take on those questions. John, Ed, could you guys post that plan up?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And Mike, do you want me to do it from my screen, or do you want to do it there? You're muted.
I can do it from mine.
Okay. Before we put it up, I just wanted just a couple preliminary comments. As Kevin mentioned, Wednesday night we have our full board meeting, and we'll be presenting the budget again. And then the way the calendar works, we will hopefully, after several meetings and workshops, adopt the budget on our February 8th board meeting, which will be in time to get it over to the City Hall by the following Monday. That's the statutory deadline for us submitting our request to them. And then the next big date to look for is April 4th. That's when the mayor releases his recommended budget, which includes our spending levels by April 4th. I think that's, if it's not in the charter, it's in their rules. And then we'll see the City Council's ad hoc committee sometime in May. We don't have the date yet for that, but that will be the usual process that we've gone through here before the City Council adopts its budget the first week in May, the full City Council. Of course, we're hopeful it'll be the same as we're asking for, but if it's not, then we'll come back to you at your June meeting if any adjustments have to be made. So that's the calendar. It's the calendar itself is unchanged from last year. So what I just looking back, is how did we do this year? We were talking Friday just about the city and our budget and all of that. And we took a look at our increase last year. If you remember, we went to 141 million. It was a 3% increase. The overall city budget, though, went up almost 4%. There were other departments that got a bigger increase than we did. Not that that means anything, but we hadn't gone back and looked at it until now, and that's what we saw. So what, if you remember in June, what we had to do was we took, when we got our reduction, there were some places we could cut our requested budget. You remember we cut what we thought would be some salary savings from teachers who were leaving at the upper end of this schedule. We knew we'd be replacing them at staff at the beginning of the schedule. So every year we save some money there. And we also at the time thought we wouldn't need as many K-5 sections, just a few. So we took those positions out of the budget. And but the big thing we did, if you remember, was we looked to one of our ESSER grants. Those are the pandemic grants, the COVID grants. We'll talk about those in a minute. And we put expenses that would have been in the school budget, we might have been faced with reducing. And we assign those into the ESSER grant. And so what you'll see in a minute here is almost the same kind of strategy. There are two ESSER grants. One expires in June, and then there's one that expires the following year. We think there's some room left in third grant that we're going to propose accounting for some expenses there again. So with that as background, Mike, you want to put up the first slide? Okay. Using our new software. Not sure we see it yet, Mike.
What do you see right now?
Black screen, Mike Seelig has started screen share.
Okay. Try again.
If not Mike or John, I can share it as well.
Let me try one more thing. This should be working.
There it is.
All right.
Okay, so we're seeing the first page,
And
a little bit of orange at the top.
there we go.
That's it. Good. Okay, so we could probably go right to the next page, Mike. And
Mhm.
Everyone will recognize this, of course. This our vision and our mission that guides us through everything we do, and we think it's important to restate that. This is a good place to remind people what those are for us. So we open our document with that. And maybe to the next page, Mike. All right, and here we are. Us cabinet members don't get pictures, but we get our names. So this is that's the second page. We can go to the next one. Okay. So for a minute on this, the strategic plan that we've spent so much time on and put so much effort into, it really does guide preparing the budget. The different things that the 6 of them, the sub plans that we have, the priorities, we really do fund those in the budget that you'll see next. And our FHR, when there's choices where to put money or where we want to, we'll put them into these areas so that we can come back a year from now and tell you about the progress we've made, and not say to you, well, we didn't have the money to do it. This is how we get the money to achieve these objectives, and you can see them right there. You'll see more of each as we go through things in the next couple weeks. But this guides us, as does the portrait of the Danbury High School graduate. And so the next one, and we all know this, but I think to a reader of the budget, this is our point, really, that our enrollment has been up over 12,000 now for a while. We've stopped saying that we're going to go over 12,000. We're over. You can see they're right at 12,210. And then over to the right, we described that a little bit. Nothing that you're unfamiliar with, but to some of the readers, it's always good to remind them that given our demographic, that leads us to make certain decisions that are probably not made in other districts that are nearby or that we might compare to, but so it's good to start with that. Next slide. Okay, so what you see here, we've taken the different parts of our budget that we subdivide, we manage, they get built, each one gets built a little differently, and then together they represent the whole budget. Salaries and benefits, as you know, you go through that with mostly our collective bargaining process, dictates a lot of what that will be. Enrollment increases there. You'll see something about that in a second. Enrollment continues to go up, especially at the high school. The new, you could almost call these budget drivers. What's driving our budget, and right there in the middle, no different than what we're experiencing at home. Our prices are for energy and electricity are going up, particularly electricity. You'll see a chart on that, but that's pushing our budget in a way that it hasn't pushed before. Technology, we'll talk about that. The ESSER, I'll call it the ESSER shortfall. That just means that what we have in our ESSER 2 grant that's expiring, we need to keep. The staff in that grant has become very, very important to our the strategic plan you just saw in our mission and our vision. We'll talk about that. So this page just summarizes the different categories that we're looking at. So a little different way to look at it when you start to line it up and add it up. You can see, I won't repeat what I just said, but you could see our needs are much more than what we can afford. So we're going to try to, not to try, we're going to identify other sources of financing that will include our current year budget, where we have some, we think we're going to have some available money come June 30th that we could advance, purchase some things. We'll talk about that in a second. And as I mentioned, the other, the remaining ESSER grant, the ESSER 3, we think there's some capacity in there. I called them here savings and efficiencies. There are also other sources of funding to bring our total increase down to 9 million in what's being proposed. Next slide, Mike. Right, so I'm not going to read through this, but things have changed from the pandemic. That's our point. It's we're more, for example, more technological. All of our students have Chromebooks now. They didn't have them before. A lot of those, most of those came in from grants or from the state, but they're being used. They're being used a lot. But when you have more computers and more technology, you need people to support that, and you need to replace them as you go along. There's no going backwards on technology. So we talk about that here. Our changing, our enrollment continues to go up. As I said, especially at the high school. You'll hear more about that in the weeks to come. But that increase at our high school is not just on the way. We're not done yet, but we like to think it's here now, and it's very difficult to staff on a regular basis. So we mentioned that. Our enrollment gains also bring kids with special needs, whether it's special education or English language learners. You recall when we showed the demographic, this isn't a situation that every school district around us has to deal with, but we do. So we mentioned some things on this page. I mentioned the utilities coming up as well. So why don't we move on to the next one, Mike? Just a summary before we start. 6.4% is 9 million when it's added to 141 million. Next one, Mike. Okay. So these, when we say currently budgeted positions, the way we build our budget, the way we built it last year, we went in and call it exported the December 6th payroll. Looked at everyone who was here, what they were working, then began to look at what bargaining unit they were part of. I'll use teachers, for example. We put in the labor contracts in our software for next year. And then for everybody in the who is here, 1,700 employees, I'll use the term, we push them up a step. So if they were on they're on step 5 right now, say with a master's degree, we put them on step 6 next year with a master's degree, but next year's collective bargaining agreement. Did that with everybody in the school district, and you can see the increase there is 5.2 million. It's a 6.6%, because people, they get steps as well as their gross wage increase. And it's, one of the reasons we have the vacancies we have is it's so hard to hire people. They're not there to hire at some of the salaries we've had. So as most of you know, as we've settled our labor contracts, we've often said to you, we need to stay competitive. It's a little higher. The contracts around us they're not settling for 2% anymore. And I won't go into each one, but the theme the last 6 months has really been labor contracts are going up. The other thing we did was we looked at exactly what type of benefits people have today, meaning if they're in the health insurance program, do they have single coverage or family coverage, whatever it is they have. We assume that they would keep the same thing next year, and then built in what we think the costs are for our health insurance claims and Cigna and all of that. And it came up with 30.6 million. It's not the large increases we've seen in other years, but this is what it came out to mathematically based on the people we have today. So this again is just the currently, call them the currently budgeted positions. Really, they're the people working here right now. Next slide, Mike. So let's just stay for this for a moment. I like this slide because certainly our enrollment is what leads us to our decisions. But this is just a 5-year look, and you can take away a couple things from it. It's going up each year for the 5 years, number one. A second thing is we're already over 12,000, as I said earlier. So what the key is, what the different colors mean. The yellow bars are, we have to count our students officially every year on October 1st. All school districts do, and those were the counts when we took them in October of each of those 2 years. I'm sorry. The yellow
right,
is
John.
the actual count. Yep. The blue is what our demographer, McClone and McBroom, they now have a new name, SLAM. That's what they were projecting. But as you can see there, we're already over the projection. Look at the figure of 12,210 and compare that to what they were saying we'd have next year. And you can see even on this was their high projection. They have low, medium, and high. We've been blowing through that by what we predict here is by 100 students. So our projections, you see that red adjustment, that's what we think is here now. So we thought rather than just rely on those projections done earlier, we're better off doing this. I don't know, Kevin, did I explain that right? It's a hard concept in all the different colors. Did I miss something or?
Right. And so for the committee, we added a quick little legend key on the left-hand side of your screen because we got some feedback while we had posted this on Friday. And so we added that. What you see in yellow, again, to John's point, those are the numbers from our demographer, starting at 11,843. This year, the demographer projected 12,110. And then you'll see all the way up to 25, 26. The demographer projected up to 12,301. Again, these are all the colored bars. Yellow and blue are both from our demographer. What sits on top of that number, going back to 21, 22, our projection was 11,843. I'm sorry, our October 1 count was 11,843. That's the number that publicly we submit to, and that's what you would see publicly if you would go to websites and see what the actual number was for the district. When in reality, we served 12,190 students because after October 1, that number grew. And so that's why you see the adjustment in red, 12,190. In 22-23 school year, which is where we are now, again, the board might recall, we reported out actually on the 12,110 students that we submitted. And that was, again, our October 1 count, as John was referring to. But as of January this month, we're at 12,210. And again, that is typical of the district. We will continue to grow significantly after that October 1 count. And so the subsequent years, again, in blue, 12,189, in blue, 24-25, 12,288. The next year, 12,301 are the demographer's projections. But the point John was raising was, we are projecting an adjustment for every year by at least 100. And you'll see the asterisk at the bottom. Enrollment is currently 100 students higher than the highest projection by the demographer. Because based on our last 2 years, and frankly, years prior, we've outperformed the demographer's projections. And we are projecting numbers at 12,289 for next year at the minimum, 24-25, 12,388. And then the following year, 12,400. So we're just trying to give you an idea, number one, what our demographer's numbers are in our reality last year and this year, and anticipating what next year's number would look like.
Okay. And so what I like to say is there's a story within the story here. And it's all about Danbury High School. Mike, if you want to go to the next slide. Yep. Okay, so a couple things, like the enrollment is already here, as I've said now a couple times, and it's going to continue to increase. If you look down there at the fourth line, we need 13 new certified positions at the high school just to keep up with what's going on now and what will go on next year. It's been incredibly hard to staff all of our classes. We've had to have teachers work extra periods. We call those overloads. You've heard us talk about those. We've had to have a large number of teachers just give up their free periods to cover classes. It is not easy to run that school with so many kids there today. So that is the biggest increase we're looking for next year is high school teachers in this budget. At the top there, the ESL, the bilingual, the special ed, that's that demographic that we all know about. But those kids need services. Some is required by state and federal law. Others, it's part of what we have to do to educate our kids. So you see those laid out. Middle school enrollment is also expected to go up next year. We think by 100 students as fifth grade moves in larger than the eighth grade that's moving out. It's that simple. All three schools will have more students next year. And then finally, safety advocates. We need more. We've talked about that a lot. This plan would add 5 more safety advocates, 1 at each middle school and 2 at the high school, a total of 5 new positions. And you can see the dollars alongside that. So this really is the story of the budget, along with, you know, the prelude of staffing going up. This is what's needed. You heard this a year ago, but I think it's much more pronounced today in our high school. That's what's changed. Next slide, Mike. Okay, I mentioned this. For us, utilities includes natural gas, electric, of course, propane. You know, all of our school buses are run on propane. Our contract with STA, we pay for fuel. That's about $500,000. And we also have heating fuel. All of those are going up. I've had a number of conversations with Chick Volpe, the city's purchasing agent, and using his forecast. And we do try and do joint purchasing as much as we can for these things. And but just like our homes, and we're seeing the same increases that homeowners are. And this year it's a budget driver. So we'll have more to say on that too in the next month. Okay. Right. So when we labeled it efficiencies and cost savings, but we're gonna there are gonna be 3 parts to our 3 strategies, I'll call them. The first, it looks at the current year budget, the 22-23 operating budget. We have a number of unfilled positions that we're trying to fill. Our preference is to fill them right away. Different reasons why we can't do that, but we have saved money because those folks have not been here, not only on their salaries, but on the benefits they would have been entitled to had they been hired. So what we'd like to do, and we will come back to you, I think in February, and ask to do a budget transfer in our operating budget from some of these unfilled positions into the technology line. And what we're going to propose is that we use that vacant position money to begin to replace some of the Chromebooks that we now have with our 1-to-1 ratio of computers to kids. That this will be the first year of a continued program of replacing Chromebooks. We think this is a good strategy that instead of increasing the budget next year. But we'll talk to you about that when we bring back a proposed transfer. And then the 2 ESSER grants, ESSER Roman numeral 2 and ESSER Roman numeral 3. ESSER Roman numeral 2, which ends in June, has some plans that we never needed to complete. Although what's going on with students and learning and instruction, that's exceeded our expectations. As the pandemic has slowed, we haven't needed to, for example, socially distance as much as we thought we would have to. We didn't have to do as much cleaning and PPE and all of those things. So what we are going to propose is going back to the state, amending our ESSER 2 grant, even though it only has a few months to go, amending it to help pick up some of the expenses that otherwise would have been in our budget that are eligible for grant financing. And then we'd like to do the same thing with ESSER 3 as the pandemic has weakened. Some of the things we had planned to do, we don't have to do. A good example of a pandemic expense that didn't quite go the way we thought it would have to is the move to Brookfield and the kindergartens at St. Joseph's School. You know, when we laid down that plan, we thought we'd be doing that for 3 years. We thought we had to separate student desks 6 feet apart. And we just didn't have room in our classrooms to spread that many kids out 6 feet apart. We needed classrooms. But we didn't need it for 3 years. And as we found space in our schools, it turned out to be a 1-year plan, not a 3-year. We'd also planned to have school buses go up and back every day, $500,000 for 3 years. It was only for 1 year. So we're going to see if we can repurpose that ESSER 3 grant for some of these things that are would otherwise have to come out of the school budget. That also would be called a grant amendment approved by the state ed department. But those 3 sources, as I said, we're turning to help with our needs for next year. Now, what we also want to make a point with, particularly as we get to the mayor's level and the city council, if you pay real close attention to the state budget, our Alliance grant is supposed to get a pretty good bump in, I think it's 2, if not 3 years from now. I think it's 2. We're going to check. Where they're going to shift some of the funding away from the wealthier schools into the schools with more need, we would stand to gain a few extra $1 million for that. And so what the way we're looking at things is we really just need a bridge for a year, if I could call it that, to get us to that year where more state funding will come in. And we've come up with, we think, 3 bridges to get us to that point. So that's the plan. We'll be clearer on that in the next month. And also, we'll be seeing the governor's new budget in the next couple of weeks, but I don't expect him to backtrack on that plan. Right now, the state is flush with money. So it's just, they're not in a cutting mode so far. Okay, next slide, Mike. Is there one more? Okay, I'd mentioned that a couple times, the Chromebooks replacement cycle we find ourselves with now. It's a good problem to have, but we also need to start to replace some of our copiers. We really haven't replaced, and there are printers. I call them copiers, but we do a lot of, that's where you send your print jobs to as well. We haven't replaced any of those really, other than the new schools in 5 or 6 years. And they're breaking down too much. It's hurting, it's making the teachers less efficient. And it's time to get back to replacing those again on a smooth schedule. We'd like to get to a point where every year we're replacing some and avoiding a big spike where we haven't done anything and then find ourselves behind. So that's built in. That will be part of the transfer I talked about. We'd like to do that with this year's budget. Is there one more, Mike, after that, or? Okay, sure. Just thought we'd describe some of the other things that are in the budget. Some you're familiar with. We have some new mandates that came out of the short, call it the short budget last year. Some personal hygiene mandates we have to finance, but then the usual kind of things of just running a school system for 12,000 pupils on 17 or 18 different locations. They're just things you do, but that's that other line. When we looked at the program needs, that was that bucket down on the bottom right. You'll see things in there, for example, high school expenses just to run the school non-staff, and some of our technology, our Our buildings and grounds program is in there as well. It's everything else for next year. And I think that's the last one, is it? Oh, of course. So it's worth a couple words on the ESSERs. And we thought the analogy of a lifeboat was the right one because the ESSER monies have been keeping school districts afloat for a couple years now. We're not alone by any means. We desperately needed these funds. But, when I use the example of Brookfield, but you could use the example at our high school. We had to make more sections everywhere, but now that we've made them, they're being filled up with higher enrollment. So we need to keep the staff, as it says there, not only to address learning loss, but some of the social emotional needs that are out there, as well as including our growing enrollment. So, I think all of the districts that have had their ESSER grants are faced with this problem right now. They talk about maybe extending it, but there's nothing that we can count on right now. So we thought we'd end with that. And we'll, of course, talk more, particularly about that and our strategies as we go down the path. So that's the presentation. Kevin, anything you want to add first, or what do you think?
Well, I'm assuming or anticipating there will certainly be some questions, and I think I'll start there and we'll follow up from there. Give the board an opportunity, the committee an opportunity to ask some questions here.
Kevin, if I may, on one of the back sheets, I saw a 6.6% rise in labor cost and 4.95 in benefits. And for a total, I saw a 5.95% total increase. Could you reconcile that for me?
Yeah, Al, I think if we could get that to you in the morning. I noticed the same thing. And I think it's the advocates that we've added this year that were not in the budget is part of the difference. But I want to be exact on that, if it's okay. I don't have the answer right now.
Because I mean, roughly from a layman's point, I'm seeing almost an 11% increase rather than like 6%. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll balance that in the morning.
Thank you. Teresa,
Question about the safety advocates. The ones you stated in this new budget, is that in addition to what we already have?
Yes, it would bring us from 36 positions to 41 positions. And we would be adding 1 at each middle school and 2 at the high school.
So for a total, how many in the middle schools?
2 each, Mike?
We're currently aiming for 2 each, although there's a backstory around some of the challenges we've had with hiring. Although right now we're slated for 2 each at the middle school. This would make 3 each at the middle school, which I think is consistent with the conversation we were having towards last summer. We wanted to get closer to like a 3 to 400 to 1 student advocate ratio.
And also you pointed out the high school or the academy principal will have to be hired, I guess, next spring. I thought there was also going to be a principal at for the middle school at the Cardis building. Are we going to hire a principal for there?
Right. So the initial planning behind this, Teresa, is to have a principal on board for planning purposes. so that we're not hiring that person blind, that person.
Oh, no, that's fine. It was just that I was concerned about for the middle school.
The middle school is not opening in 24, 25. And we're moving forward with our plans. We're gonna have 3,800 students at the high school. The high school is still gonna need admin support as we needed previously. And so the idea is to move forward with our high school plans as we had initially outlined. That planning called for us, as part of our planning, called for us to have a principal in place by the midpoint of the school year. They would be here as part of the planning, the scheduling, because it's going to require some unique scheduling now that even more unique scheduling now that everyone's going to be in one location. But because the middle school principal that building is not opening yet, we're not hiring that person right now.
Oh, okay. No, I was
Mhm.
just wondering where that was in the budget.
Right.
Thank you.
That won't be into the 25 school year, leading up to the 25 school year for that summer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
So that position is in the increase or is not in the increase? I'm really confused.
I want to make sure which position are you talking about?
We're talking about the academy principal that we're onboarding this spring.
For middle school or high school? Just want to make sure I understand which one you're asking about, because Teresa was talking about both.
Well, I guess it doesn't specify in the asterisk on the
It's a year,
slide. It just
it-
says includes half full-time employee for academy principal.
that's a year from now. That would be January of 24.
So I'll clarify. So the academy principal is for the high school, right? And so our plan is to move forward with our implement our plans and our academic plans. And we still need to plan for 3,800 students. That 3,800 student planning requires us to be really strategic with our scheduling. And it also calls for us to meet the needs of 3,800 students in the building. We feel strongly that whether that person was going to be ready to open up a new school, or whether we have to do this on one campus, we still need that person in place for planning purposes and to ready ourselves for the 24-25 school year. So our thinking is to have that person in place this time next year. So we would be budgeting for the 23-24 school year, but on a 0.5 basis, because we would not hire this person until January. So this person will be here with us for critical planning to open up next school year. Plus they would be here for the second half of the year, helping and understanding how the school operates.
Okay, and that, I guess, kind of leads me into my overall concern about this presentation. I'd really like to see a line by line budget with the details that, with all of these bucket amounts broken down, so that we can really see what's making up these figures, these very just general buckets.
Yeah, I understand. And so we have three, and perhaps I should have opened with this. We have three subcommittees. We have two subcommittee meetings planned. And then one that I'm asking to move around to make sure curriculum committee could also have an opportunity. So what I would like to do to suggest is the curriculum committee on 118 switches with our community relations committee. So community relations is scheduled for 2-1. I'm sorry, curriculum committee is scheduled for 2-1, and community relations is scheduled for 118. And so I would like to flip those two so that Kara can speak to the staffing requests to address the enrollment gains over these last couple of years. So this will allow her to speak to enrollment, staffing, and any of the items that are speaking to the budget for this year. The same goes with Mike. Mike has sites and facilities this Wednesday on the 11th. And so I've asked Mike to make sure to his agenda, he has added in budget detail, talking about safety, talking about technology and maintenance and any other services that might be part of his department's, various departments, presentation. And then last but not least, it's the finance committee. We will have another finance committee meeting before our next board meeting, I believe. And that is on 1/17. And for John to speak to those program needs that he talked about with utilities, and I believe it was gas, I believe it was propane, and give the more details around those things. And so we understand as part of our budget book last year, we submitted line items, if the committee recalls. And we also tried to give some kind of detailed presentations in our various meetings leading up to the first. So just looking back to last year's plan, our first meeting we gave, and that was a condensed version of our finance report, if you will. But the first meeting was an overview in January of the budget process. The next meeting was kind of an overview of the budget drivers and the request. And then we jumped in kind of the detail behind it. So if, we'd like to do something different, we're happy to do so. But we've been just kind of following kind of what we've been doing the last couple of years. But we're happy to adjust. But I did ask my three liaisons for those committees to make sure they provide that detail in their respective areas. And then, of course, we'll be prepared to speak in even greater detail at our next meeting.
Kevin, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
I see on Wednesday night's board meeting where you're going to have your budget presentation. If we could not switch things around, but give us the line by line earlier so we have a longer time to digest, form an opinion, and make some hopefully suggestive comments, positive comments. I think waiting till the last, farther out we go into the shorter period of time when you have to submit this to the city, puts the board at a disadvantage to help out and comment and possibly change any direction that we may need to change.
Okay.
Farther out is not better for me, and just my layman's opinion, sir. I am not an accountant.
That's fair. That's not going to require much work for us to have it ready for Wednesday. So we'll just need to have an adjustment, which may not be ready tomorrow morning to post for tomorrow afternoon, but we can certainly have it on Wednesday.
All right. No, thank you. I thank you for your efforts, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you too, Al. I totally agree. I think talking in generalities is it's helpful. We always say, we don't want to be bogged down with the numbers and just give it to us in layman's terms, which is helpful. But I really need something that supports these generalities. So I appreciate that, Al. I agree. Before our presentation on Wednesday would be nice.
Any other questions?
Well, I just want to clarify along with the presentation, right? So we'll incorporate it into the presentation, the detail.
Thank you. And we'll be getting the book, or the book will be forthcoming after.
Right. So, the book we have typically as we get closer to the 14th, and we make sure the board has a representative book that the council will get. But we typically don't have the book until we get closer and have that level of detail that is going to be provided there. Because I think some adjustments are typically made before we go to print. But I can clarify with the team.
Well, even just to have an online version so we can see what makes up these numbers.
Right. And that's what we'll have on Wednesday if we're saying the same thing.
Okay.
And can I also ask in those numbers, you have the special needs, the English learners, those categories. I realize some of the same students are all 3, some are all 2. Is there any way we can break it down to see how many total students we're dealing with those needs?
I'm sorry, Teresa, when you say 3 and 2, I don't think I understood that.
The categories, the special needs categories, the English as a second language. like, what are the total numbers? They're basically, some people need two, of those categories, some need, what was that other category? Was he special?
Teresa, this is Kelly. If I, Kevin, would,
Special needs and handicap, if I
Yeah.
remember.
so I think what you're asking for is the total number, and we could break that down for you for sure, of the students that receive special education services, ESL services, and free reduced lunch. You're talking about our high needs
Thank
population.
you, thank
Oh,
you,
okay.
We can,
thank you.
yeah, we can certainly do that. And then what we will let you know is the total number of students that fall into individually who qualifies for those, and then who, how many are in one or more, or I should say two or
Right,
more
right,
categories.
just
Yes.
curious, it just seems to, yeah, it's getting bigger, the number, it seems.
It definitely is, yes.
And John and Kevin, another thought. I saw, if I remember correctly, a $2 million ESSER shortfall. Will some of our other grant items be picking that up a bit, or are we going to still be at that $2 million shortfall in grant money?
Well, the grant that we're going to look to finance that primarily is the ESSER 3 grant.
Okay,
We just have to make sure the positions fit, meaning that they're eligible to move in. But I imagine if they were eligible in ESSER 2, they're probably eligible in ESSER 3. The purposes of those two grants is pretty similar.
right. And once again, I have to ask, do we have any strategy to increase the traction on the state money, the increase that is out a couple of years to bring it in closer, like July 1?
Well, we do, we share, the Board of Ed shares with the city, the services of lobbyists. Ryan Bigham, he's very good. We do look to him for advice. He'll often ask us for information as he has those conversations, and he communicates back in real time, and he's talking with the reps and legislators. So we could ask him what he thinks the best things we could do between now and the next few weeks, and see what he says.
Possibly if you could reach out to him and maybe get back to us to see if he's encouraging or not.
A lot of times that work begins after the governor releases his budget, because we really don't know what's going to be in it till we see it. And then once we see it, that's when it starts. But let's see what he has to say, and I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Right, and I will also add, there is already a plan to make a formal request to the state again. And I just want to reiterate again, because we advocated with a number of other districts last year in a joint letter to the governor's office, asking to expedite or accelerate the ESSER funding to districts like Danbury. We outlined the reasons why. We went to a big press conference last year, the mayor and I, on behalf of the city of Danbury. There were certainly not a lot of other districts there as well. Our request was, did not make it very far, but that's not going to stop us from submitting a similar request again. And so the city and I have already been in discussions about submitting a similar request as we did last year, and hoping that this year will be a little different, but the same request will be forwarded again, and again, hoping that obviously the results will be different, Mr. Russo.
Kevin, I believe Kate had her hand up first, then Terry was number two. Kate?
Thank you, Al. Mr. Walston and John, Mr. Spang, I just want to thank you for the presentation this evening. I really like the clean look of it. Sort of piggybacking on what Mr. Russo and Ms. Gillespie were saying, I'm looking at like the ESSER funds summary, which talks about, these numerous positions that would have been unbudgeted or non-existent, and they allowed us to perform critical functions. I'm less concerned with having like a line by line for the Wednesday meeting and much more interested in seeing sort of like, a short list of the positions you're talking about. To give us like a fuller picture of what it is. You're talking about the social emotional needs, you're talking about pandemic related learning loss. What are the positions that we've added in that have sort of, allowed the ESSER funding to provide this sort of lifeboat for our schools? And that will sort of help us, I think, get a stronger picture of, what we need to focus on keeping for our kids. So just kind of taking that approach with all of the slides here, just to have like, if you're making reference to positions or you're making reference to, under the equipment and
Services.
services. Yeah, the equipment and services, the equipment and services there, like, if you can talk about some of the specifics in that section, I think that would really go a long way to help us understand what it is we're looking at. Because I'll be honest with you, sometimes when I look at the line item list, I have to go back and pull out the budget from the previous year to sort of do a side-by-side comparison, and that does get a little confusing. So I would rather just have a sense of what it is you guys are specifically talking about. All right,
Okay, that's fair. Thanks, Gabe.
Or give us both.
thank you.
Carrie, you're up.
I think it was at the soup meeting. Kevin, you said that we got $600,000 grant
Yes,
from this, was it the state?
yes.
I just thought that was a good chunk of money. What did we do?
The $650,000 is planned. Oh gosh, Teresa, I'm sorry, you caught me off guard. Kelly, do you remember how we planned that money? I know we had outlined some things through Kara's office. I don't remember.
In which specific one? Because there was more.
The latest $650,000 grant coming from the state.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, because I'm not sure, I wasn't sure if you were referring to one of the previous ESSER ones. That one we are working on, working towards additional trainings to build, to launch our literacy program, and also some additional social emotional support. So those were the two. We're actually working on still finalizing the submission for that. But those are the two focus areas predominantly in the grant.
Right, and conditions of the grant.
So the conditions of the grant were post-COVID recovery, and those were identified areas, both the reading as well as the social emotional needs of kids, which is why those two main areas were picked to focus on and help support our population.
Thank you.
You're
Any other
welcome.
questions? Rachel,
Thanks. And going back to the reallocating funds, pre-buying services for the next fiscal year, is that legal? Are we allowed to do that? I mean, how?
So the Board of Education has complete autonomy or control over its operating budget. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with ordering things in May and June to be used in September. Many districts do that as a procedure just to make sure that they're here on time. So there's no reason not to. The reason places don't do it is they don't have the available money to do it primarily.
Okay. And did you touch upon some examples of what those services would be? And did I miss it?
It'll mostly be the first year of our one-to-one Chromebook replacement program. Many of those Chromebooks that we got, some came for free from the state. Others came with the very first CARES Act, ESSER 1 as it's sometimes looked back on now. But now that we have them and, we need to manage them. And then the second piece is the copier replacement program that we need to begin. I think that's a 6-year program, and we'd be doing 1/6 of our need. There may be there very well could be some other things as well. We haven't completely identified what could come. So that's what's in there so far.
So is that in addition to the additional 1 million for those things?
No, that is the 1 million. We would spend $1 million for Chromebook replacements in June. After making a operating budget transfer from vacant positions, primarily paraeducators.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Ladies, gentlemen. Citywide PTO at 6:30. I would take a motion to adjourn, Teresa.
I
So,
motion to
I'm
adjourn.
sorry, I'm sorry, Mr. Russo.
Oh.
Can I just close out with a couple of things?
Please, my apologies, sir.
And no, please. So I just want to thank everyone for the feedback. This meeting, as I had shared with the team, is really important to our overall process. We will incorporate the updates as we heard them this evening, and get them in. I don't anticipate we'll have them by the close of business tomorrow, all of them, but we will have them by Wednesday morning, and we'll be able to post the updates to the presentation. So I appreciate the feedback, and we'll make sure that that level of detail that the committee was asking for has been incorporated. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Russo.
Last call. Last call. Terry, Kate, Louisa, Michelle,
Motion-
Julie, Josh, Paul, George, Ringo. Anyone have any final questions
wanna-
before we adjourn?
I don't have a question. I just want to make a quick comment. Based on the budget, did you guys, you guys said you need to replace some of the equipment such as copiers in general. Have you thought about leasing those equipment? Sometimes they come up a lot cheaper than buying. I mean, it's just a suggestion. I'm not sure how much is a copier machine, but maybe if you list them, might be saving some money on that.
Yeah, one of the most common ways that schools and cities and towns finance copiers and printers is through leasing, but it's lease purchasing. It's more akin to a installment contract where at the end of 5 years, there's a dollar buyout if you want it or not. And the state has bid many machines that way, so we'll be looking at those very, very carefully.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again. All right, I want to thank Mr. Walston, Mr. Spang, Mr. Miranda, Mr. Seelig.
Kelly,
Yeah, I know. Okay. I was going down my list to make sure I didn't forget anybody, right? Kelly and Dr. Casimiro and everyone for attending tonight, and our esteemed counsel, Kim Thompson. I see you smiling, but you've been quiet, and Happy New Year to all. So I would like to make this motion to adjourn, and I will probably see you all in a virtual world in a few more minutes.
So moved.
All right. So be it. If not, maybe we'll see each other live Wednesday night. Okay.
Great.